So it's Brandon.
Brandon, yes.
Brandon. So if you can tell me a little bit, what's your background? Um,
My background, well, I spent a year in the military. It was a standard thing for most South Africans when we left school, but I did volunteer for paratroopers. That's how I started my fitness. So obviously I did a bit of Sistema, which is a Russian hand-to-hand combat. Up in
you
Joburg.
mentioned you were in the paratroopers. That was
Yes.
South African
Yeah.
unit. What was the name?
44 Parachute Brigade, based in Bloemfontein. So
Okay.
that's where I was. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was my background, and then how I got into the fitness industry was friends of mine who knew that I'd be in the paratroopers. They're like, please train us, train us. So we did kind of like a boot camp, we call it a combat fitness training, just giving them the experience of what we had done in the paratroopers. Even though it was a year in the military, most South Africans back in the day were trained for warfare. But unfortunately, at that time, even though it was the end of apartheid, a lot of guys were sent into very volatile areas.
Angola, Mozambique.
Well, at those stages, there were a lot of townships.
Yeah.
Area Katlehong and Sokoza, the ANC and IFP were very hostile towards each other. So I mean, there were a lot of South African soldiers based there, especially the paratroopers, with such a reputation as they had.
Yeah, reputation was very good.
Yes.
Now, in terms of let's say military activity, whether it's war, guerrilla, urban warfare, what I write is about survival, and eventually you never know, but people might be in a difficult world, induced to end up in
Yes.
areas where you have to
Absolutely.
run, flee, fight. In terms of fitness preparation and what's so obviously if you just pump iron and lift weights, it's not necessarily efficient.
Yeah,
Because,
absolutely.
what's your point of view on how you prepare yourself for these things?
Most of it's body weighted training. I believe in staying as fluid as possible, but mass muscle unfortunately slows you down, and a lot of times, I mean, it's because we're in a very stressed world. A lot of men tend to keep stress in their shoulders. So I mean, your shoulders need to be very mobile. I mean, I've just experienced for me life on the streets. It's like one day I was going through to college the one day, and we rode past the taxi rank. And as we went past the taxi rank, there was a shootout. Literally, people were running, I remember. And the first thing, the military thing kicked in, I just said, everyone on the bus, down, 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 push everyone down. So, I mean, if you're not fluid enough, you won't get everyone down. And there was even a situation, I was working for a friend of mine, and there was a cash and transit heist, and literally 5 meters away. So, I mean, instant kick and military training pushed everyone to the ground, flat as can be. So, as I said, for me to be as fluid as possible, mass muscle in a combat situation and even a self-defense situation is not really conducive. I used to train with a guy who was an ex-policeman, and unfortunately, in the line of duty, the guy was shot in the chest. He was almost shot dead. And I remember seeing them doing more cardiovascular exercise. Before that, the guys used to push 150, 160 kg weights, and then asking them the question, why are you doing cardio? Because the guy said, when the bullets fly, you might die. And it was, I mean, for me, body weights are training. Even when I do squats and lunges these days and stuff like box jumps, so it's more anaerobic as well. Kind of workouts.
So, what would you advise people who, in terms of workouts, and when you mention as fluid as possible,
Yes.
What does that include? Running?
I think some of it's got to do with running. Sometimes anaerobic fitness helps, but sometimes it doesn't. I just know from a hand-to-hand combat perspective, it'll be easier to end a fight if one guy attacks you. If there's, say, a group of 3 or 4, taking the first guy and putting the other guys in a situation where you've got their friends and saying, well, do you want me to X, Y, Z? I could break his arm, rather back away. So sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't help. But I mean, I had a friend of mine. He was in quite an area called Gympie Street in Cape Town, and he had been a long distance runner. But he had also spent time in the military, and he experienced a situation where he was approached by 5 or 6 of these youngsters, and they tried to rob him. And his long distance run, he said he started running after he pushed one of the other guys, and like you were saying, if it wasn't for his long distance running, but then I'm more of a guy who prefers to fight than to flight.
I agree.
Yeah.
Now of course,
going to sleep is it?
that's all right. That's all right.
Okay.
So when you so running is one thing in terms of exercises, and you and I we've discovered we shared
Yes.
Sistema.
Yes.
What by the way is it that you like in the Sistema model?
I like the model that it's relaxed, that it doesn't use aggression. We were brought up at school, very much aggression orientated. My dad was in the Rhodesian Light Infantry, and so I remember even being in the South African military, a whole aggression stuff, and even, I mean, we had seen situations as youngsters of. Unfortunately, the one time riding into a township and actually witnessing people killing someone, So you automatically think the whole aggression thing works. Maybe because back in the day we were outnumbered, So, I mean, and I think that was more of a World War II mentality. But then again, I also my dad used to be a street fighter, and a lot of street fighting is, unfortunately, I had some friends who were very aggressive and very deadly on the streets, guys who would almost kill people in the street fight. And that's just the way we would do. But like as my father once said, he said you could actually kill someone in a street fight, and that's what you don't want to do. Because if you lose your cool and you do it, unfortunately, the repercussions are quite harsh. So that's what I enjoyed about Sistema. That's more a protection thing. I can teach it to my wife, teach it to my kids, teach the basics. Yeah, and it's more about being humble. I think as I've grown and am older, going to the army at 18, you're very arrogant, you're very cocksure. They give you a rifle, you think you're bigger than anything, and everyone is scared of you because of that rifle mentality. So I've just realized the calmer you are, the more you could turn the situation around.
Yes. And the interesting thing about Sistema is also the flexibility that
absolutely.
you have with your body,
yes,
to not become rigid, and in fact be able to move yourself
yes,
away from a threat or from
yes,
a pressure or from strength,
yeah,
and
no,
use
absolutely.
that against your opponent.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my dad was a boxer, and you look at pound for pound fighting, and that's how they used to train. And the whole Sistema thing was so different, of using their weights. Because I know even my dad had been in a fight situation where the one guy was so much bigger than my dad, and they were just using old school tactics of headbutts, kicks. But I mean, the guy was so big that kicks and punches couldn't work, and I mean, it almost ended in a bad situation. But I mean, if Sistema, I remember seeing some of the guys. I mean, the guy Vadim Drobin, we used to train with, not a big guy, but the fluidity of them, I mean, it's incredible,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The maybe what was your rank in the party?
I was just a rifleman.
Okay.
So I mean,
sometimes it's better not to have responsibilities in this.
Yeah,
things.
sometimes it's even though we didn't have responsibilities like that, but we all had a responsibility anyway. We're responsible to each other.
Exactly.
So I mean, that's the thing. That's you got rank regardless.
Yeah. In terms of the for most people who are urban or living
Yes.
In suburban houses or buildings, where can they start to be practicing and getting not just a better body, because that's irrelevant, but a body that is more tailored to potential difficult situations that might include combat or war.
I think a lot of it's got to do. You can do it at home. You can do push-ups, sit-ups. Got a neighbor of ours when she was 16 years old and pregnant, just got married. Her fiance had gone off to the Rhodesian War and she was on the farm and they gave her an Uzi and she had a small child and it was a 16-year-old, you know, and guys had gone, 3 or 4 guys had come on the farm because they actually found out later that they had actually had a arms cache on quite close to the house. And there's a young 16-year-old firing off at what's in terrorist freedom fighters.
Yeah.
Some guys call them freedom fighters. So for me, push-ups, sit-ups, there's guys in Cape Town that I got hold of who are doing Systema through DVDs that are being sold now, you know,
Yeah.
which with Vassiliev and all of them, and the other system organizations are providing, and that's top-notch fighting techniques.
Yeah.
So you know the guys are training, they're getting the breathing techniques and everything like that. And I know guys like Vadim does quite a few courses down in Durban. I'm not too sure about you in Cape Town yet. So I mean there are guys doing it. So I mean you can, YouTube these days. There's a lot of stuff. You can purchase stuff overseas. I mean from some of the material that I've read, just going further into it, where I realized even one of the top guys in Systema, he had been in the military for a short while, but as a private contractor, trained most of the guys in the military, special forces and stuff like that. So for me, it's body weighted training. It's
Yeah. Well, I certainly agree with that.
yes.
And I have a lot of work, but it's good. Thanks a lot. Huh?
No, thank you very
Take
much.
care.